So, getting back to basics. That's what this show is all about. We're going to talk about addiction today, which is one of those things that is kind of basic, but I would like to, go into it a little bit so that people will have an understanding a little bit more, mostly about nicotine and smoking. But people have to understand that addiction is a lot more than just smoking. So today's guest is Kate McNally. Kate, you're from the smoking cessation program at Cheshire Medical Center?
That's correct.
Okay, yeah, good. And so you're going to be talking a little bit about smoking, but let me back up a little bit, okay? So addiction. Addiction is not just smoking.
Right.
Addiction can be overeating. It can be sugars, salt, computers, sex.
Gambling.
Right, any kind of thing that makes you like ultimately feel that high. And a lot of the addictions are things that you just can't pull yourself away from. And so, a lot of the addictions have been accepted, things like smoking and drinking, those are accepted social practices until they get out of hand. And so, in the past, we've had all of these advertisements, these really cool like smoking advertisements that were promoting smoking because there was big money in it. You would have things like Marilyn Monroe, you would have doctors that would be promoting, it's so healthy for you. There's all kinds of things that they've had in the past that have really gotten things going. And I know that kind of hit them in the face when they went to court and everybody was suing them. But with the smoking thing, it's been around for a long time. It's been an accepted practice. So it is hard for some people to get out of it. But how did this all get started? How did we end up where we are right now?
That's a really good question, Jody, and I think it's hard to say. I think it's because, it became a multi-billion-dollar industry almost overnight. As soon as it could be marketed, mass-produced, as soon as cigarettes could be rolled up and made by machines and matches could be created so it was easy to light them, it really took off. And then it kind of came to a screeching halt in the 60s when the first Surgeon General's report came out that said that smoking could cause lung disease or other chronic illnesses. And when that Surgeon General's report came out, the populace that were engaged in smoking just kind of, they slowed down, extremely slowed down.
Right.
And so it dipped, the numbers dipped.
Right, and what I was reading a little bit is that the men actually stopped earlier than the women. It took the women a little bit longer to hop on board.
Well, it took the women a little longer to get on board. So it seems like that's just the way the whole transition into smoking has happened for women, and now it's an equal opportunity chronic illness, really an equal opportunity killing behavior. So I think it's we're almost at the same level as far as use is concerned. So women kind of gained interest in it when they could do it socially. And when the industry started selling female-specific tobacco products like Virginia Slims and Eve cigarettes, and and you saw those ads that said, "You've come a long way, baby." Remember that one? You've come a long. So it seemed like you were really liberated if you took up smoking.
And there's pleasure. Some of the commercials, the advertisements that I was looking at too. It's pleasure. It's what you want. You get that gorgeous guy on that horse, that Marlboro man. Like it's amazing to see what they were promoting, and then doctors, were promoting these kinds of things. So it's just like anything. You see it, and so you believe it, that it's good for you because that's what they told you.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to go back to that liberation piece, and that, for a lot of people, smoking was that first risky behavior that they engaged in that made them feel like they were independent and they were breaking free maybe of the nest, right? And addiction is so contradictory to liberation because addiction really is a dependence. It's a dependence. In this case, we're talking about tobacco. It's a dependence on a drug that changes our brain chemistry and makes us feel different. And the way I usually describe addiction to people is, you have a problem with something if you have a problem not doing something. So whether it's gambling or, buying scratch tickets or sex, shopping, the computer. If I have a problem with Facebook, I know I have a problem with Facebook if I have a problem not getting on Facebook.
Right.
In the case of tobacco, most of us did not have any idea that we could possibly be addicted to it. And I know I didn't. When I first started out smoking, my mom said, you don't want to do it because you won't be able to stop. And I'm like, what do you mean I won't be able to? Of course I'll be able to stop. Well, it was soon after just starting as a teenager that I realized that I was doing it because I really kind of needed to do it, not because I was really loving it.
Right.
And so it started with stealing cigarettes, and then it's, from my parents, and then it was, when I got a job, I started buying my own. I asked permission to smoke from my parents at a young age, and they let me because they both smoked. And I think they thought it was normal. We all kind of thought it was normal.
It sort of was normal.
It was normalized.
Because that's what people do.
Everybody was doing it. If you see, and watched some television shows where there's constant smoking going on in those shows, that was the time.
Right.
And but addiction is very severe for many people for many reasons, and I maintain that addiction is why we smoke. We don't smoke necessarily because we love it. Most of the people that come to see me, we have a conversation about their pattern of smoking or chewing tobacco. And what we really can reveal for people is that your brain has receptors that receive the drug nicotine, which is the most addictive drug there is. Your brain receives those the drug, and when your receptors are full of the nicotine, then your brain also gets a flood of what they call dopamine. It's a transmitter that tells you feel comfort, pleasure, and reward.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
We want to be comforted, we want to feel pleasure,
Exactly.
we want to
We're
feel
human.
rewarded, right?
Yeah.
And what happens, though, is that nicotine doesn't last very long in those receptors. So soon after having a cigarette, maybe a half hour, 45 minutes, for me it was about 45 minutes, the receptors shed the nicotine, and the dopamine starts to fade, and then we feel discomfort, displeasure, and we feel like something's missing.
Right.
We might get stressed, we might get angry, we might just feel, depressed, anxious. Those are some of the symptoms of detox. So when people come in to see me, they'll say, I'll ask, why do you think it is that you smoke? And they'll say, well, I smoke because I'm stressed out. Well, more people who smoke are more stressed out than people that don't smoke because they're constantly going through detox.
Right.
So if I'm a pack-a-day smoker, my brain is shedding the nicotine about 20 times a day, and the dopamine's going away 20 times a day. So at least 20 times a day, I'm getting a sensation of discomfort.
Right. And so what you have to do is you have to think about it as to why it's happening. It's not just a common thing. It's not something that should be happening.
Right.
It's because of what you're doing in your life to make this happen. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I take the drug, nicotine.
Right.
I use the drug.
But then I need more.
And it boosts the dopamine, and then I have to continue to do it but then I also have a dependence because now I've been conditioned. So for me, I was a 30-year smoker. Over 30 years, my brain had been conditioned to respond to stress, displeasure, boredom, anxiety, depression, all of those things. My brain had been conditioned to respond to those things by smoking.
Right.
So now if I have a car accident or somebody makes me angry, my brain says, you need a cigarette, whether I need the cigarette or not. So that's the psychological dependence on that drug. That's a little bit different than the addiction.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because some people will have that addiction and other people won't. We were talking a little bit earlier, and I tried cigarettes, a couple of times, but I never got addicted. So I was a lucky one. But there's so many people out there that are just like me that think that they won't, and they end up in that place. Now, what happens when you are addicted? How do you get off from something like that?
Well, what we practice at Cheshire Medical Center are what they call evidence-based practices, or best practices for tobacco treatment. And what we recommend really is, it's a combination of things. For people that can use them, the nicotine patches, gum, or lozenges are substitutes to be used as a short-term intervention. In addition to, there's also medications that may be helpful, but in addition to looking at the psychological dependence and changing some behaviors, learning new coping skills, you're not a smoker. You deal with stress a certain way.
Right.
And so we kind of talk about what do non-smokers do to deal with their stress. They might show their anger, or they might just take a walk, or they might do deep breathing. So we talk about a lot of those coping skills that smokers don't practice.
Right.
We find alternatives to that. And then we look at also the pattern of use, so changing the habits and looking at the routine and plugging in new behaviors, new things, new activities that will help to take the place of smoking during those high use times.
Right. Because, I remember, again, this is a few years ago when it was all common, but, you'd go to a bar and you'd grab a drink and have a cigarette, and your hands would be going, and maybe it's because you're nervous, maybe it's because you don't feel really that comfortable, but you have that drink and you have that cigarette, and life is cool. So, who knows why you get started, but the fact is that you need to, try to think of it. And, the fact is also that you need to be ready to make that decision, because nobody else can tell you, you've got a smoking problem, you've got you've got some kind of a problem. You have to be ready to take that decision and, take control of your life if that's what you want to do. So.
Well, you talked about, alcohol and tobacco, they go together pretty well. One's a depressant and one is a stimulant and a depressant. So the alcohol's a depressant, the tobacco is a stimulant and a depressant, so they go really well together. And, picking up a cigarette may help to relieve some of that social anxiety that you may experience when you are with a group of people.
Right.
And so in a bar, we don't smoke in bars anymore,
No,
but when you're in an environment where there's a lot of drinking going on and you can socialize, then cigarettes seem to go with that.
Right.
And you talked about how you had experimented with tobacco and you didn't get addicted. Some people are just not wired for addiction. So some people are not genetically made up to cross that line. Most people that smoke or most people that use tobacco do get addicted because, it's just it's such a highly addictive drug, the most addictive drug there is. And so, it makes sense that a lot of people will use it as that drug to take care of that anxiety they feel in social situations. So for people who come to get treatment, I'll say maybe you need to give up the alcohol for a little while, or just have an escape plan kind of, or a to-go kit when you're going to be in those social situations that you have something else that you're going to reach for, a straw, a toothpick, a cinnamon stick, or something like that, instead of grabbing for the cigarette that you would ordinarily grab for.
Yeah. Now, we've talked about cigarettes, but there's also some other alternatives that people will use as well, like chew.
There's chewing tobacco. Chewing tobacco is another, it's one can of dip has about as much nicotine as about 3 packs of cigarettes.
Really? Wow.
So somebody who chews may be very, very addicted to that kind of tobacco because of the way that it seeps into the soft tissue in the mouth. I, have great success so far working with my chewers, and usually they need more nicotine replacement products. I'm a big fan of the nicotine replacement products. So for a chewer that would come in, if they were using a can a day, then I might suggest to them that they use a couple pouches a day. But I really feel like it's important for people to seek out someone that can help them through the process. Don't try to do it alone. Nicotine replacement therapies like gum or lozenges, nicotine patches can be really helpful. All tobacco is addictive, and some are said to be safer, but they just have different problems with them. So a chewer may have problems with their gastrointestinal system. They're more likely to see bladder cancers, kidney cancers, colon cancer, prostate cancers. Whereas, we hear mostly when we're talking about cigarettes, we're talking about lung cancer, although we have linked cigarette smoking to all kinds of other cancers, breast cancer included.
Right. Well, the other thing that we haven't really touched on, too, is health in your mouth.
Right.
Your teeth, your gums, your teeth have a lot to do with your heart. And so if you're causing problems for yourself with your mouth, and especially with chew, just in some of the things that I've been reading, I cannot believe, think about it. You have that chew right in your gum. That is so close, and that's just seeping directly right into your body. And all those nicotines are just getting seeped up. It's just...
I'm more concerned not about the nicotine as I am all the chemicals that are in the tobacco.
That's true, yeah.
So, when tobacco's harvested, when it's grown, it's got a lot of pesticides on it. So the things that, when you can go Google what's in a cigarette, and you'll find there's formaldehyde, battery acid, acetone, those kinds of things. That's largely because of the pesticides that they put on it to keep critters from eating it. They have to do that. A smoker lights it on fire, so they have a little chemical reaction going on when they light it up. And chewers are just putting those chemicals in their mouth. So the nitrosamines are coming from the pesticides that are on the tobacco, not necessarily the nicotine itself. So if a person needs to use nicotine, I encourage them to use nicotine as a replacement, as a step down in a short-term intervention. That's not what I'm afraid of. I'm not concerned. If somebody needs to use it for a long time and it's clinical nicotine, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about people lighting it on fire or putting the tobacco in their mouths.
Right.
One of the things they add to cigarettes is ammonia. And the reason why they add the ammonia to the cigarettes, if it's not menthol, it's ammonia, is because it's what they call bronchial dilator, so it helps to open up the airways so that you get your dose of nicotine really fast. So when you light it on fire, your dose goes to your brain in about 7 seconds. So what they put in chew, you'll find, or you've probably heard this already, they put fiberglass in the chew because that helps to open up the tissue. It's an abrasive, so it opens up the tissue so that the nicotine gets into your system quicker, and you get your delivery of the nicotine.
It's alarming to me. I just have to tell you, I've seen people chew, and I thought it was kind of normal because pretty much everybody did it. A few years ago, everybody was doing it, and now they've gotten more towards chewing gum and different things like what you're talking about. But it's so scary to me to see what we're doing to our bodies. Yeah. So you brought in now this is not iced tea.
No.
No. What is this here?
This is a year's worth of tar for a half a pack a day smoker. So if I consume about a half a pack of cigarettes a day, then I'm going to consume this much tar. Because everything you burn creates that tar, that residue. And that's one of the things that's compromising the air sacs. So I brought Louise along here. Her name is spelled Louwheeeze, so Louise or Wheezy. So when Louise smokes a cigarette, the heat from the tobacco injures the air sacs, and also the resin from the tobacco will, kind of hangs out here. And I talked about all those chemicals that are in the tobacco. Well, the chemicals are in the tar, and they're just kind of hanging out, doing their thing on top of those air sacs.
Is it like clogging the
It gets
the
in
lung?
the way of the air sacs performing the way they should. It's not normal to have anything, a vapor or a residue, anything like that on the air sacs in your lungs. So it compromises their ability to
go
perform.
in. Okay, right. So this is
That's a good
normal.
lung.
Yeah.
So I can pump this, but we're just
It's
not really working.
Yeah,
So.
people won't really see this,
It's
I
all
don't
right.
think.
They
But
won't see
it's just an example, though, of.
But this is the good lung, and this is the bad lung.
Right.
This
And
is the cancer.
Yeah, it's
because your cells get damaged. They're compromised. You have good cells and bad cells.
Right.
And you really want to keep your cells healthy and free from the heat and free from not only the residue that comes from tobacco, but carbon monoxide is another thing that we're consuming when we're smoking.
So if you don't inhale, it's okay. I'm just joking.
Yeah.
No, my grandmother actually used to smoke Chesterfields, and they had no filter on them. And I used to watch her. She'd have her cigarette and her coffee in the morning, and she'd listen to the radio, and she'd be out in the kitchen, smoking away. And I thought it was normal because that's what I grew up with.
Right.
But when you look back at what she was doing to herself, she was preparing herself for what she was going to be like when she was 65. Because when she was 65, she got emphysema, which was something that was progressing, I'm sure, throughout her life. And I'm not saying that everybody is going to come down with, a life-threatening problem, but in her case, I remember this when I was in my early 20s. And she ended up having to have a tube put in, and she had a breathing apparatus that kept her alive, because if she didn't have it, her lungs would not be filling and closing. She'd have to have it suctioned. I mean, it was just like, this shouldn't happen to people.
Right.
When you look at your grandparents, you don't want to see them dying because they made some sort of bad decisions.
Bad decisions.
Yeah. And where was I going with this now? But teeth. Like if you're chewing, it might not be affecting you now. And like when we're young, don't worry about it.
Right.
We got a whole life ahead of us. But as we get older, we start thinking about these kinds of things because our life is not so long. And you think about all of the time that you spent doing all of this, and you thought life was going to go on forever. You know,
I'm going to be honest with you, though. Most people don't really care about their health.
no.
They don't really care about their health. I mean, when you're younger, you don't really care about your health because you're not seeing you're thinking immediacy. You're thinking, today. You're living for the now. You're living in the moment. And what I think is the thing that turned me, put me over that edge, I guess, is, realizing all of a sudden, I realized one day that I'd spent a lot of money on tobacco that I needed to have for myself. And it just seemed so easy just to give the cash over, on a daily basis, just give the cash over.
Well, it's only a little bit at a time.
Right,
It's not a big, you're not giving them $500, although it may cost you $500 or more for the year.
Well, your copays for health issues. If you have chronic bronchitis, and in your early smoking years, you probably have more colds. You probably are absent from work more. And it's like gas money that you could be putting in your car. It really is.
Yeah.
And I think that for me is one of the tragic things about tobacco use is that it really takes away from our quality of life, and that it makes us less unable to save for ththings that we really want. So one day I kind of sat down and I went, is this what I really want for my reward today?
Right.
Because 50%, it's a 50-50 shot of getting sick from tobacco.
Right.
But, is this what I really want? What would be a real reward for me today? And a reward for me today is not tobacco. A reward for me, a thing that's really going to make me feel good is if I can visit somebody in a foreign country, or I can take a trip, or maybe I have a nicer car, or paying my bills. That's kind of nice. But the money thing is really, for the young people, I really wish for them that they were able to take now it's about almost $6 a day that pack-a-day smokers are smoking, and put that towards something that they really want. And tobacco is probably not the thing that they really want that's at the top of their list.
But it's easy and it's fast and it's not all that expensive. $6, you can go to McDonald's and spend $6, or you can go and buy a pack of cigarettes. And you got, 20 of them in there or whatever they have. One other thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit is, the secondhand smoke. I see so many, especially young parents, smoking, and they've got their kid, their newborn, right there, and they're having a cigarette. I don't think they realize, you hear it all the time, but they don't realize how much of that secondhand smoke is really affecting those children. I know somebody that grew up with his parents smoking, and he had problems with breathing.
He had an asthma.
Asthma, yeah. And those kinds of things, you have to think about it. Yes, just today you're having a cigarette, but what happens to your kids later in life?
Right.
Again, we just don't think about the future. And I know, I'm not saying we have to plan every minute, but I think that we really need to think about the big picture. And, if we're doing this now, what's going to happen to us later?
More children who are exposed to secondhand smoke have tendency to get ear infections. And if they have any breathing issues, like asthma, then that would be exacerbated. It would be made worse. We also know that having there's also a lot of discussion about third-hand smoke, and that's when the residue from the tobacco smoke lingers around and it stays on fabric. So people really should be careful about smoking and covering themselves up if they're going to be handling small children.
Right.
We know a lot more now than we used to know, and I don't believe that people don't know. I think people just their addiction has just caused them to be in denial, and they don't want to believe that they could be causing a problem for someone else.
Right.
Most people will say, "I'm not really hurting anyone but myself." And
but they don't realize.
And they really believe that, and that's just because they've convinced themselves to believe that.
Right.
But we do know secondhand smoke causes problems for other people that don't smoke. There may be long-term consequences, and so it is important to keep it away from children if possible, and pets too, because if you've got a cat or a dog, if you're smoking around them, then they're going to lick their fur, then they're consuming those nitrosamines, and so they're more prone to get some other kind of issues.
Right. So where should they go if they want to learn more about how to quit smoking or how to quit chewing?
They should call. There's a couple of different options. They can call me. My number is 603-354-6513. They can call me. and set up a time to have a discussion or do an assessment. Or they can visit our website. It's CheshireTobaccoTreatment.com. They can visit the Cheshire Med website also. They can just call the main switchboard if they forget the number and just ask for the tobacco department. They're going to get me.
Yeah.
There's also the state quit line right now, the New Hampshire state quit line, 1-800-QUIT-NOW, is giving out free nicotine patches. And all you have to do to get those free patches from them is to call and set up a time to speak with someone, a representative, once per week for 4 weeks. And as long as you're willing to quit in the next 30 days, they'll help you out. But there's lots of help available today.
Right. And online, I noticed there's a lot of different things. And, you can go on and, if you're not convinced that maybe there might be a better way, then go online and, check it out and see, read some of the stories. I mean, maybe it hasn't happened to you yet. Not you, but maybe it hasn't happened close to you. But when it does, it's really going to wake you up. And maybe it's not going to be too late. It's never too late, correct?
It's never too late.
Right. But, maybe we can make some better decisions. Who knows? Again, you have to be ready to make the decision that you're done with it.
Jody, 70% of people want to stop smoking. 70% of smokers want to stop. 85% wish they never started.
Right.
And we have help. We have help available for anyone that wants it. If they're ready, just give me a call and we can talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that you look much happier, much healthier than you did, 5 or 6 years ago even, before. I don't know, how long have you been?
I haven't smoked in 12 years.
12 years, okay. But still, you look really great. And I hope that everybody else out there has an idea and goes for it. And okay. So anyway, I hope that you are interested in learning more about getting off the cigarettes, getting off from tobacco of any kind if you can. If it's not your choice, then that's up to you. But make a choice, take control of your life, and live well. And let me see.
Be healthy.
Yeah. Just take a choice, make a choice. All right. So we've been here in Back to Basics, and we hope you'll come back soon. Thanks.